What's up, guys? Today we are going to be breaking down my favorite project, 1080 Cottingham, from start to finish, renovation, refinance, everything in between. It's going to be great.
This one, it was super special, but more importantly, a great example of how the right strategy can turn an overlooked property into a high-performing asset.
What do you have to say? You want to talk?
So, as I explained, we're going to go through the entire process, acquisitions to dispositions, etc. First off, this lead came from our cold call campaign, which is referred to as target marketing. Essentially, I use Batch Leads, which is a platform to pull a list of owners with at least 90% equity in their homes. The more equity, the more likely someone is to take a discount. And that being, it would be in exchange for convenience, speed, or really just whatever caters to their needs. It was a pretty tough process here, obviously in a great part of town. It was off market, and when I showed up, an agent was leaving, and when I was leaving, another agent was showing up. So the sellers had a good bit of options. Those two agents did suggest an as-is list price around $850,000. So what I did, I explained that given the market, right, inventory is super low, or at least was at the time. Now it's actually the opposite. But at the time, inventory was super low. So a lot of these agents were going ahead and suggesting higher list prices than what was actually fair, just in hopes to get the listing and expecting their seller to come down on price eventually. But I also pulled some facts just from Redfin, explained that, hey, in this neighborhood specifically, properties usually sell about 2 to 3% below list price. So taking 2% off that 850, we landed at, I believe it's 834. We were around there, so I said, hey, best case scenario, what's most likely to happen is you sell at 834. And that's before concessions, right? A buyer that's gonna go ahead and pay $834,000 is most likely gonna want some sort of concession, they're gonna want some repair, they're gonna want something, right? Because the house is as is, it's very outdated, hasn't been renovated since the 60s or anything like that. So they really needed something flexible, right? If they went on market, they couldn't, close whenever that they wanted to. The daughter was driving back and forth from Atlanta each weekend, helping her mother move out, and they ended up coming with me. I offered them $770,000, super clean, cash as is, no commission. It was $770 net to them, no mortgage whatsoever, and more importantly, a flexible close, right? So I set the price where I need to be, and I said, hey, we can close next week, we can close in 6 months, we can close in 10 months. We agreed on a 90-day close. We did end up pushing closing back a few times, but more importantly, we got the deal closed. They were happy, and I was happy as well. All right, so we went over acquisitions. Now I have the deal under contract. Our original closing period was 90 days, so I now have 90 days to determine my scope of work, what's gonna happen, right? So I start developing my scope of work, I get some estimates, I dial in my plans, so we could basically start demolition right after closing. My original plan for this house wasn't anything crazy, keeping the same footprint, putting on a new roof, a new HVAC, bathrooms, bedrooms, landscaping, etc. Which obviously is not what happened. Our original numbers pre-project obviously were purchase 770, reno 160, ARV 12 to 125. The reason that I knew I was going to be living in this house, so I was just grateful for the opportunity to live in such a sought-after neighborhood. And I didn't want to be greedy. I said, hey, let's keep this easy, let's do what I've done before, let's not try to reinvent the wheel. But a fellow investor here in Charleston told me I was leaving way too much opportunity on the table, and I was just thinking too small. And if I weren't to put an addition or do something new with this house, I would just be shooting myself in the foot. Reason being because to add a square foot is $250 per square foot to add, right? And then in a neighborhood like this, that praises around $850 to $900 a square foot. So there's an opportunity to just add so much value. After that conversation, I went home, did some research and decided that going all out was my best bet, simply due to the location of this home. Started redesigning the entire house, opening the floor plan, adding a swimming pool, and other luxurious amenities really became the new plan. Going this route did introduce a lot more risk into the deal because my project timeline pretty much doubled, went from 6 months to 12 months. I now needed an architect, I now needed an engineer, a licensed contractor, and a ton of permits. Also needed about $400,000 more to pull this off. So started with the architect, we finalized our plan, then took the plans to multiple contractors, got estimates. After some back and forth, I chose my contractor, and now it was just a matter of finding the additional money, right? So I had already agreed to my original loan of $930,000, which had me at $160K renovation costs. With the updated scope, our budget came out to around $500, so I needed to find about an additional $340,000 to pull this off. Yes, I could have gone back to my current lender and adjusted the loan, but I knew I couldn't find someone else cheaper than 12%. That was the goal. So I went to my private lenders, I started shopping it around, and ended up finding someone to come in at second position for $340,000 at 6% on a 6-month note, all deferred to the back end. Now, this is not normal. Those are amazing terms. I got very lucky with the second position loan, and it was crazy. So breaking down the project, final numbers, pre-project again, because I do change in the end, was purchased 770, Reno 500, ARV 2 million to 2.1 million. So the original home was a 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,744 square feet to be exact. We decided to pretty much double the size of the master, added a secondary master suite with a full bath and an outdoor half bath. So final layout came out to 4 beds, 3.5 baths at 2,600 square feet, say, not including the 500 square foot outdoor porch. In order to do so, we had to blow off the entire back of the house. Due to setbacks, we couldn't go any wider. We could only go up or back. So we decided to go back. Engineering was definitely quite interesting. We took about 70% of the roof off to reframe the house in order to get 10-foot ceilings and really reorganize and restructure the actual floor plan, which was definitely worth it. It was scary, but with a great contractor, this was all a breeze pretty much. My jaw dropped when I realized just how much value we added by doing the addition. We bought this at $441 a square foot, added 800 square feet, which then appraised at $904 a square foot. So doing the math on that, we created exactly $768,000 in just value by adding 800 square feet. All I know is I should have added more. Should have kept going, should have added more square feet. That's what happens when you network and you surround yourself with the right individuals and they give you that sort of advice because they've been in those shoes before, and that's exactly what I did. All right, so we're gonna fast forward to project completed, everything's done, gonna go over final numbers. So after everything all said and done, all in at 1.4 million. Yes, we did end up going a little over budget, but with interest, closing costs, etc., change orders, additional interest payments due to missed permits, we came in at 1.4, but luckily that appraisal came in at 2.3 million, which is $200,000 over what we were projecting, which is just additional icing on the cake. So that's a spread of around $900,000 that we now have on this property, and that doesn't just happen, right? You have to be very clear on your plan, you have to execute, and you have to stay consistent, right? So instead of selling it, we did decide to do a cash out refinance and hold the property for 2 years. Reason for doing that is to qualify for a 1031 exchange, which allows us to roll those profits into a new property without paying capital gains tax. The cash out refinance, as explained, my plan the entire time was to refinance and live in this house, but I just never believed it was possible, to be honest with you. And since I am an entrepreneur and don't have guaranteed income, I'm only eligible for a bank statement loan, which means the bank reviews my past 6 months of bank statements and determines my average monthly income to decide whether I qualify and what I qualify for. Luckily, that did work out. Fun fact, bank statements are always going to be a point lower than retail since they are riskier loans specific to entrepreneur. If I die, who is going to go ahead and take over my payments, etc.? If my business fails, who's going to take over my payments? So, but luckily in this case, my loan to value was so low at 57% that I actually qualified for retail rates. So at the time, retail was 6.625. That is the rate that I got on the loan. We did end up taking out a $1.25 million loan. $930,000 of that went to our hard money lender, and then the remainder ended up going to our private money lenders. And the other benefit of this too is that, by not selling it, number one, we do have the 1031 option. Number two, we also have a lump sum of equity, right, that we can now borrow against. So 900K spread, that was considered equity, can take 80% of that, so around I think 720. So I have up to around $720,000 that I can go ahead and borrow to use it on other projects. I can go ahead and just use it to invest in my business, maybe scale marketing, bring on some new guys, get more deals, etc. But what's really awesome about this is that right now I currently pay for hard money, I pay 12 and 2, call it 14%. monthly interest only, which is a high rate, right? So I'm not too competitive on my offers. I'm just really banking on finding a good deal, finding a seller that is, going to give us somewhat of a discount to make it work. By doing, borrowing from this 80% throughout a HELOC, whatever it be, a line of credit, whatever route I do end up going, it's going to be a lot lower. It's going to be around 8, 9, maybe 10%, depending on the deal, depending on the lender and the time. But that's going to open up a ton of opportunity, right? Like I said, it doesn't matter what I use it on, if it's a deal, if it's an investment, if I want to go buy a boat or whatever it is, I could go do whatever I want with that money, which is awesome. Obviously, I'm going to be smart about it. But in the end, this was a deal that really worked out for us. Yeah, it would be awesome to sell it and cash out and then go and reinvest. But thinking long term, right, we're a young company and we want to be in business for a while, and we don't need that money right now, right, to go ahead and continue to scale and do what we're currently doing. So we'll go ahead and kick that can down the curb, and in 2 years, hopefully identify an amazing commercial asset, a multifamily asset that we can go ahead and 1031 all this money into, and really start building our portfolio and building generational wealth. All right, guys, we went over acquisition, we went over financing, we went over scope of work, as well as the refinance and a lot of in between. And all those things, everything I previously mentioned in this video it's how we scale, not just by flipping everything fast, but by making the smart plays with long-term upside. And this is exactly why the project worked. Number one, we understood the neighborhood. Number two, we knew the comps. Number three, we had the vision and saw the potential. Number four, we planned the exit from the start, right? We knew what we were doing and we were able to reverse engineer that process to make sure that we executed, and it wasn't just a one-off win, right? We'll continue to do this and double down and continue to grow. So if you're looking to grow in real estate, think beyond the quick flip, find the right deals, build the right value, and use smart financing to multiply your results. If this breakdown helped you out, I'd really appreciate it if you gave us a like. If you have any other questions or want me to go over anything else, please drop a comment. And if you could also subscribe, that would be great. And I appreciate you for tuning in. We'll see you on the next one.